All right. Hey, thank you everybody for being here today. Great to meet some new faces. Great to see some old friends. And look forward to our time together here today. So thank you for jumping in. And I want to begin with the word of prayer. Just go ahead and get us rolling here so I can honor your time. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the privilege for all of these leaders in different ways to be a part of the work of your kingdom. Lord, you have entrusted to them work in their churches and their ministries and the places where they serve, and you've placed them in communities and around people and in neighborhoods where they truly can make an eternal difference and impact. And so I pray, Lord, that as we talk about Alpha today, as we take a look at one tool in the toolbox you've given to us to be able to have faith conversations, to be able to connect with people, Lord, I pray that you'd open the right doors and this would be helpful to people in however you might use it. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. All right. My name is Nate Schaus. I am the lead pastor on the west side of town, Summit Community Church. It is an LCMS church in Buckeye, Arizona. So if you go about a straight shot from here, about 45 minutes out to the west side without traffic, we're in the mountains on the other side of town, right up against the mountains off of I-10. As we talk about Alpha here today, look forward to sharing a little bit about that. But before we jump in, I just want to ask you, as we're welcoming some more friends and people into the room, feel free to grab a spot wherever you want. There are a few more chairs back there. What do you want to know? I'm curious, as I'm just aware of some questions. Tell me what brought you here today and what are you hoping to learn? Are you trying to start Alpha? Are you already doing it? Or you don't know anything about it, trying to learn more? A few of you, share what you're hoping to gain from the time together today. Yeah.
I want to try to get more youth in.
Okay.
It can be done through your program, right?
Okay, excellent. Yes. So a question about youth. There absolutely is a Youth Alpha series. And there's some great tools there that resonates with kids and with students for sure. Great. Yeah, in the back.
They were in an army base with 40,000 soldiers, most of whom are nuns or duns, but they desperately want community.
Yes.
So I want to see if Alpha is a possibility to meet that need of community, but also talk spirituality.
Yep.
Not so much specific, but in general.
Okay. All right. So from the military side, she used the term nuns and duns. Everybody know what that means or get an idea there? You know, research increasingly shows there are people that are now more and more all the time, increasing the percentages are rising for people that have no affiliation. And I think it's just becoming even more socially acceptable to do that. You go back another generation or two. There are a lot of people that really didn't have much of a connection. Now it's just a lot easier to own, to say, to hold that. Or people that once were connected faith-wise and now they're done. We'll talk about that and I'll share about some of the sessions. It's very straightforward in terms of the Christian message, but there are the openness of the conversation and the ability to engage is really dynamic. Yeah.
What are some of the biggest unseen barriers for implementing Alpha for the first time?
Oh, great question. Well, I'll share a few things there that we learned along the way, some mistakes that we made that I thought, okay, this might have helped accelerate the curve a little bit more, some things that I wish I knew on the front end. But ask that question again when we get to, I'll do some question Q&A at the end. Would love to make sure we click into that. And part of it is that there's a few different ways that you can leverage and use Alpha. So it depends upon what you want to do with it. Great. Good. Yes?
So we have a number of AA and NA groups that use our church.
Yeah.
They're close, but not reached yet.
Yes.
Trying to use something like that.
Okay, so with some of your community support groups, places on campus, and I think when the door is open for people where they have said, when you're running that track, there's an openness to a higher power, right? So I think this can give a framework. Alpha is so accessible for people, especially if there's a little bit of spiritual openness. Even if they would call themselves an atheist or agnostic, not a nun, there's a ton of space here to be able to have conversations effectively in that space where they may not sign up for a doctrine class at your church or Christianity 101 class. Yep. Good. What else are you hoping to gain or get from the time today? Anything else? Yeah.
Even early childhood program that's reaching seen a lot of families, and then when they start interacting with our church, we realize that there is very little to any understanding of the faith, and a lot of things that we would always assume had been a part of someone's upbringing, and so we're looking at kind of a zero entry kind of discipleship.
Zero entry discipleship, you're in the right place. Yeah, for families, young families, I mean, across the ages, it's really effective in terms of how it communicates and speaks. But I would say especially, you've got to be at least digitally savvy enough, and your content has to be curated in a way that it gains the respect of younger digital generations. This does, the Alpha Film Series does. And yes, I think for a lot of people, the fact that Alpha can be presented in such a way for people that say, hey, if you are new to, we will often say that at our church when we're talking in that space, is to say, hey, if you're pretty new to faith, if you never really learned about the Bible, this is all, you're not quite sure where to start, and Alpha is a great place to begin. And I think it could be a great asset for your families. Good. Anything else? Back there and then up there.
Super basic. A buddy of mine said that Alpha is driving baptisms into this congregation. I've never heard of it, and I saw it here. And I was like, okay, what is it?
Yes, I would agree for us as well. Great. Love to share more, and it helps. It is helping a lot of church. It's helping our church, at least. I mean, that's what I can speak to in terms of helping people take steps of faith and connect with the core claims of Christianity and who Jesus is. That a lot of other programming just doesn't get to quite as quickly. That's great. Yep.
Our early childhood preschool is probably 98% East Indian
Okay.
and Hindu. So we have a couple, maybe Christian families that come.
Yep.
But I'm looking for something to maybe help bring people together and to just ask questions and learn more. So I've seen Alpha around in the community before, but
Yeah.
it's been since Caucasian going on, and I think they want to fit in someplace.
Of course. Yeah, so I think when you've got a couple of different ways that you might track that with Alpha in terms of some of the resources. I don't know, but the Alpha team would be able to potentially tap into that. You might have, even for some first-gen people there from an ethnic background or pocket or group there, it would not surprise me. They may even have Alpha in the native language. I think it's been done in about 100 different languages around the world. We have only used it in English and Spanish in our context. Welcome to the west side of Phoenix. But but even if it's done in English and that works in that context, there is an international flair to a lot of the stories, testimonies, and things that are brought in that really honors what God is doing in other countries. Yeah. Great. Okay, well, we'll take some more questions as we go along, but let me share. I want to start with Scripture and share, again, some of the reason behind why we do what we do, and I'm sure you know this, and this is a verse that speaks to you as well, but I think about Jesus and Luke 15, as Jesus told the three parables of the lost sheep, the lost coin, and the lost son. And as Jesus said, verse 3, Jesus told them this parable, suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Doesn't he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, rejoice with me, I've found my lost sheep. He said, I tell you that in the same way there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous peoples who do not need to repent. And if you are captured at all as a leader to be able to say, how do we help some other people, like you talked about with a friend and a buddy that's saying, this is helping them see more baptisms, more people connect faith-wise. If your heart is captured by that call of Jesus to say, you understand how relentlessly the work of the church and the institution of the church turns you inward over time. It just trends towards who you know, the ministries of caring for the people who are already there. For me, Alpha is one of those signature ways for us at our church that we focus on saying, let us not forget, and let's stay motivated and externally focused in terms of how we lay eyes on people who don't know Jesus yet, and how we create those conversations. For me, not just even running the programming, but for me, how do I help our people? How do you turn up the evangelistic temperature and passion for people so that, as we would say here in our context, we would say, who are your ones? Who are the ones that you have the ability to connect to? Because your church, you'll reach some if you promote this as an organization to say, hey, come and be a part of this. If you can get your people to be a part of, and other new believers to be a part of reaching their friends, and using this as a place to have these conversations, it is absolutely incredible. What is Alpha? Short description for you there. It's about 11-week course. We run it as a 10-week course that has effectively created a space for people to ask questions and explore the Christian faith. It was launched originally out of Holy Trinity Brompton, so HTB, a church connected with the Church of England over in London, and a part of the renewal movement with so many dead and dying churches over the last number of years, couple of decades. This was one of those places where God moved in a tremendous way to help people discover Jesus again in a context that over there, they're ahead of us in being post-Christian. Would you agree? We are trending there very, very quickly. And so all of a sudden now we have more and more people that have never heard of Jesus, more and more people that have no context, no background, more and more people that have written it off. It was born out of a place that helped that conversation. And now more than 20 million people have gone through Alpha in over 100 languages that have used the Alpha course. So I don't know all of them, but I wonder if there may be some opportunities in different places. So to give you a quick overview and a little video snapshot of what Alpha is all about and what that's like on a weekly basis, take a look.
Life is busy. Every day we ask questions like, what's happening today? What should I wear? How am I going to fit everything in? But then there are bigger questions like, why am I here? What's my purpose? Where am I heading? Is there more to life than this? These are some of life's big questions, but there's rarely enough time to think them through. That's why Alpha exists. Alpha is a place to explore life's big questions in a safe and open environment. It's a series of sessions where anyone can share their thoughts and opinions and ask questions without feeling judged. When you come to an Alpha, you'll notice that first, there's food. Whether it's a full meal or a light snack, this is the time to get to know each other in a casual setting. Next, you'll watch an Alpha talk. The talks are created to engage and spark conversation. They explore big issues around faith from a Christian perspective. After the talk is a time for discussion. This is the most essential part of any Alpha. It allows everyone to share their own opinions on the ideas presented in the talk. It's a time for people with different thoughts, beliefs, and experiences to ask honest questions and have open conversation. Every week, there are guests coming for the first time to an Alpha in our community. Alpha is for everyone, regardless of background or beliefs. There's no pressure, no follow-up, and it's completely free to attend. Come and explore life's big questions. Find an Alpha near you today.
So I said before that different churches, different ministries will use Alphas in different ways. You can do this personally with a few friends and can just do it at that scale. You want to get a few people together in your neighborhood and do that. I've got a 20-something that's in college that ran tech for us for a couple of years. Now he's in a different part of the city, in a different place, and he rolled back into church this weekend. He said, I started Alpha with some of my friends. I'm like, that's awesome. That's great. Go get it. You can run Alphas you can run them with students, like student-led stuff on campuses or in universities. You can run Alpha out of your church. That's the way that we're doing that at Summit. You can run Alpha in prisons. It's done in a lot of different places there, where people are often hungry and very open to what God would do in their life. There's lots of different ways that you can leverage Alpha, and what I want to share with you here is simply for us, for our church, like, why did we do Alpha? And I think you can run it for different reasons. The heart of this especially is evangelistic. So it is designed to be able to help people who are seekers, skeptics, nuns and duns explore the Christian faith. And ideally, create a place where friends can engage friends and can have a safe space to be able to have some conversations, really question, disagree, share their thoughts and opinions. It really honors the skeptic in an incredible way that still points towards faith. So for me at Summit, our mission is leading people who are far from God to courageously follow Jesus. So for us, how do you help to connect with people that right now are far from God, have turned away from Him? Our city here in this area, Phoenix is not overly hostile to the gospel. As a pastor, I can operate pretty freely. I engage. We partner as a church in lots of ways. But Phoenix is 80% unchurched. 80%. Only 20%. The number is higher for people who would say they're Christians, 40 to 50. But if you survey and you ask the question and do research, are you a Christian, and do you think that being a part of a local church is important? It's only 20%. So, lots of outdoor activity, year-round space. So, for me, high priority for our church to say, how do we use this as a tool to activate our people, to get them involved in being more evangelistic with their friends, their neighbors, their coworkers? The second thing for me was this. A few years ago, we're a church plant, helped to relaunch a number of years ago on the west side here of Phoenix. As my wife Liz, we've been out here since 2007. What I found is we did baptize and reach a lot of people in the high school, but I was incredibly convicted around probably 2018 that we were reaching a lot of new people for Christ, but we were not discipling them well. And it was very, very hit or miss. If they got in the right small group at our church or connected with the right people, their faith really grew, took off, developed. But if they didn't connect in the right place organically, we saw people fade away. And so for me, this is, for us, Alpha is our primary new believer course. So that for somebody that is exploring the faith or someone that's a new Christian, I want our whole team in our church to help get them there, to help establish them in the fundamentals, the foundational beliefs, teachings, and habits in terms of following Jesus, what that means. So the added benefit we've discovered along the way is Alpha is an incredible way to get new people involved in ministry. Because they have the community, the way that this thing rolls, engages people in such genuine, authentic community. It is a super easy ask for those new people, and even some that are still borderline skeptics, to come back and serve in some way as a part of Alpha to help make this happen for somebody else. So that's our why. The dilemma, of course, is, as we talk about even Jesus then saying, look, so often our ones get lost in the world around us. Right now, there's an increasing disconnect between the church and the culture and the world around us. The great dilemma in many ways here right now is, why is there such a void, and why is there such a big disconnect between Christians and non-Christians? And so I want to ask you, and just have a little bit of discussion here in the room, why don't you call out a few things here when you say, all right, the reasons why non-Christians, somebody that's not a believer, not connected and engaged in the church, why do you think they tend to avoid Christians? What would you say?
Sundays off. Sundays
off. Okay. Yeah. So I don't want to. It would cramp my style, right? My weekends are already committed. Football. Yes. One of the reasons why we launched a Saturday night service. Yes. Judgmental, yeah. So had a judgmental experience with Christians, or even increasingly, right? Just read the headlines all the time. The baseline starting point is Christians are an immediate problem and they're suspect, unless you're maybe one of the good ones, right?
Unless you're a bunch of hypocrites.
Yeah, okay, or a bunch of hypocrites that they've known some people, or just even publicly in terms of ministry personalities, don't feel like the church actually takes seriously or live out what they believe.
Christians are closed-minded.
Christians are closed-minded. Yeah, it's a big one right now for sure. Yep. Yeah.
Don't know the secret handshake, so they're a little nervous about going in.
Yes, yes. It is really hard to break it. More than we realize. It's normal to us. It is not normal to other people that have not grown up in church. The secret handshakes, the code for walking in, that lost look when somebody has when they walk through the doors of a church for the first time and they've never gone before, is a real thing. Yeah. Good.
They don't like our treatment of gays, lesbians.
Yeah, so the LGBTQ community, how churches tend to interact in that space with people. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So you heard that conversation a few weeks ago of moving. There's this progressive movement that says archaic, oppressive, free.
Yep.
And that the church actually lives in the oppressive space.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and is keeping back people from full freedom.
Yeah.
In life around any issue you can throw it down.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think right now, yeah, living in the postmodern, post-Christian values acceptance and individual freedom above all else. So if the church is seen as a restrictive force, if the idea of faith, it somehow disrupts what an individual would decide is right for them, it's a hard bridge to cross. Helping people understand the freedom of the gospel and the hope that this brings, Alpha is very helpful with that. Yep. Yeah.
I think all that's true. Most of my interactions isn't that deep. It's
Okay.
mostly they don't have someone who passionately goes to church that is wanting to invite them into it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's a disconnect there that genuinely a lot of people in our country, like say you're in town, if 80% of people are not connected with the church, there are a lot of social circles where they really don't either know Christians or they don't have a Christian that's actually paying attention and is passionate about wanting to connect with them. Yeah.
I think they don't want to be accountable for their actions.
Don't want to be accountable. Okay, yeah, sometimes people are, there may even be a little bit of guilt or shame, but feel like I don't even want to go down that road. I don't even want to open the lid on that. Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let's flip it around.
No, I know. It's
Yeah.
that our way is the only way.
Okay, our way is the only way. That it seems very closed-minded in terms of the approach. All right, flip it around the other way. What are some reasons why Christians tend to avoid non-Christians? What would you say? Rejection. So fear of, what if I take this step, I reach out to somebody and it doesn't work. Yep.
Don't know what to say or don't want to say something wrong.
Agreed. Don't know what to say. Don't want to say something wrong. Yeah.
You don't know any Christians. You have a really tight church community. All your friends might already be there. So it might be hard to find somebody you know well to invite in.
Okay. Yeah, so sometimes there it's that you've got a very safe circle of people that you know. And yeah, harder to break out of that to find other people. Yep.
I just don't know how. I just don't know how to break the barrier to start talking about faith.
Yep.
Might not care.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Trying to figure out how to break that barrier and move through. Yeah.
Fear that this is their one chance and I'm going to blow it.
All right. One chance, I'm going to blow it. I don't want to mess it up. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Occasionally, we will have people who will take Alpha at our church because they're trying to figure out how to have conversations without thoroughly messing it up. They want to be able to talk to their coworkers, but the last conversation they had went so badly. They feel like, I don't even know the questions. I don't even understand the questions. I thought they would be asking this, but those aren't the questions they're asking. Yeah, Scott.
Christians don't want to be in the messiness of non-Christians' lives.
Yes, Christians don't want to be in the messiness. That's a part of the challenge of all of this here is that you really, you pursue a lot of people evangelistically and you want to see people come to faith that have not grown up around church and they're not church broken. Don't be surprised when the response that they have and how their kids act and what they say and what they do will not fit the norms of what many of the people in your church think is acceptable early on in their faith journey. As I think about some of the ways trying to tee up, my hope is that Alpha can be one of those places to be able to create a bridge and a space to help facilitate more of those conversations and to help see that happen. And as a church, activating some people that can be reaching, engaging, drawing people in to those kind of conversations really can help to bridge that gap. I think about somebody like Milton at our church that is attending now, but a couple of years ago came as they were going through some stuff with their family, came with his wife, and they came to Alpha. A friend invited them, brought them, came to Alpha, and as they plugged in there that night, Milton works in construction, rough around the edges, no church background whatsoever, no concept of the space at all. As we were talking with the team and debriefing afterwards, it was fun having his kids back with the kids team that night, because as the kids were sharing something in the kids space while we were doing that, we provide that to make it easy for families to step in. They were talking there, and they shared some story out of the Bible that night with the kids. And one of Milton's kids, one of his boys, looked back at the person in our kids space and said, "You guys really don't believe all these made-up stories, do you?" And they're like, "Well, yeah, we actually do." And yeah, like, so what makes you say that? Or you're, "Oh, that's what my dad says all the time." Right? That's the messiness of people that are genuinely starting there and get on that journey. Milton was baptized about 6 months after he went through Alpha, and is on this journey, and he's actually serving with our team to help other people experience Jesus, because he knows what it's like not to have this be a part of your family and your journey at all. He's somebody that's probably late 30s. This has been really effective even for teenagers or 20-somethings. There's a young guy, probably about 20, 21, that has gone through this here recently, and self-proclaimed atheist starting out, and came, though, a couple of Sundays, a couple of times with some friends, and we were getting ready to launch Alpha, and I had a conversation with the lobby, and I said, "Dude, just give it a try for a week or two. See what you think." Said, "I'm not offended, whatever kind of questions you have, or I get it," and came and tried things out, and I remember even as he was baptized at Summit in this last year, lots of questions, a lot of social anxiety. Actually got baptized after one of our worship services, so it wasn't up in front of everybody, but had some of his friends and family there. And I remember talking with him a couple of times on that journey where he said, he was constantly struggling with the sense of God's grace, and that I've got to be able to make things up. I've got to get in a better place before I'm really ready for this. And to see how Alpha helped him in that journey, to be able to say, God's enough, and there is freedom in this, that it's not all on you, was incredibly life-giving for him. This has been effective. I want to share a video here with you of somebody that's from that de-churched or a done perspective, kind of walked away from the faith. This is somebody from Long Beach, from Southern California, sharing about his story.
I grew up in Long Beach, California, and I grew up in a pretty conservative, sheltered Christian home. And over time, I just kind of started resenting my parents for all the things I felt like I couldn't do, even though I think they were probably trying to protect me. I first started acting out just by lying, and lying just really escalated and just kind of got progressively worse and got into deeper and darker things as I got older. Probably around age 25, I realized that I was just going too far. I was losing control. I started going back to the church because there was a girl that started going that I was interested in, so I was following her. And I just got to the point where I needed something more. I needed community, and I just told God that I'd sign up for the next thing that came up, and it was Alpha. I honestly didn't expect much. The hardest part for me was just showing up the first night. There was just something inside of me that was like, don't go, but I knew I had to. Alpha ended up becoming the place where I could just be me, and it was just a place where I could kind of like air out all my questions and all my dirty laundry, and nobody looked at me any differently. It became a community of friends. We have the same group every week, and we just start to bond. And I started realizing that the way that people were treating me and the way that I think God looked at me was just love, no matter what I thought, no matter what I said, no matter what I did. And it just changed me. I was a different person from that moment on. And I knew I had purpose.
We had a young couple that started coming to Summit because there's a charter school right across the street from our church. And their daughter actually asked about that building across the street, and they were not churchgoers, but asked about that and was curious about maybe, coming over. We had a movie night that a flyer went home from our church, or digitally went out to the school community, and so they came to a movie night at our church. Ended up feeling like maybe faith or trying to figure some of this out might be good for our kids, a kid-motivated parents, right? Very, very common in terms of who helps to drive some of those first steps in families. And Madison and Cooper came. And I would say the format of Alpha, and that's what I want to talk to you about, the format of this, the way that it sets up around food, around conversation, creating some genuine connections and relationships with people, that as they hear, and is very clearly presented in terms of the Christian faith and message and what that means, but the opportunity to build community as they are talking, discussing around that has been absolutely transformative. And that's one of those families there too, baptized, connected in, all those kinds of steps. And Madison actually just joined our church staff in working with our events coordinator there just a couple of years after walking this faith journey. And fun to be able to see now, even internally within our church, how you start to develop leaders and people that grow out of some of the first faith steps that they took. To highlight that though, she was kind of digesting, exploring. Her husband, Cooper, loved he had so many questions, didn't know where to ask them, was exploring and loved some of the interaction around this and trying to figure stuff out, and open to that. In those times around the meal, we use the video teaching. You can do, there's like a talking head. Nikki Gumbel is kind of the main presenter or teacher with Alpha back through the years. There's one that's like him mostly teaching as a solo presenter in the front of the church. You can use the Alpha film series. That's what we use. And that is with a variety of voices and very richly multimedia oriented in terms of stories and stuff on site, even around the world in a variety of different places. There's a student version. There are scripts and things that you can use if you want to teach it live in your own space. You can do that. But the idea there for the meal, the video teaching, where it clearly says, here's the message, this is what we're giving there. Then the discussion that drives that afterwards is the place where they get to share their own thoughts, their opinions, and what's a priority to them. So, what does it take to launch Alpha? As I said earlier, you can really do this on a small scale with a small group or even just with a few friends. You have people that will do this at their workplace over lunch. If you want to run it with your church as a whole, I've got a couple of handouts and some stuff I'll share here at the end in terms of how we structure some of the schedule, the events, the timing, how we stage some of that over the course of a season for us. But the place to go is alphausa.org. And that is the place where you can go there, you can create a free login, access, lots of training materials, stuff for training leaders. It'll give a lot of introductory stuff. Hey, how do I get started? What do I do? So alphausa.org is the best stateside resource for you here to be able to explore and see on demand how to explore and look at all that. I would say if you want to get this started, if you are the sole pastor or a lead pastor in your church, it might be a little bit easier to do that. If you are a staff member or a lay leader and you're wondering how I get started, I would cast some vision, talk with some lay leaders and say, I would love to do this. Larry Osborne out at North Coast, I heard him say this years ago. He said one of the best things you can do when you're trying to position something new you want to launch is to simply ask for permission. Don't ask for blessing. And what he means by that is this, that it is a lot easier to be able to say, hey, is it okay if I just try it? It's just going to cost a little bit of money or no money or I'll cover the cost. Can I just have your permission to give it a try? As opposed to asking everybody through an entire staff or through an entire team to say, all right, everybody is excited about it. We understand it. We're on board. Everybody is giving this our blessing. It's how do you figure out where you can get the blessing from the key decision makers where you need that, but ultimately say, can we just try it as an experiment? Now, if you really want to leverage this as a primary platform in your church, then getting a lot of your key leaders and senior leadership with the church and all that driving there becomes increasingly important. But you could even say, if your church says, let's talk about it this fall, join a group that's going on, or just do it with a few friends on your own right now. And it gets that under your belt. Does that make sense? Choosing the location, food plan, how you want to navigate that. It's really as simple as ordering some books. You can get those on Amazon or through some of the church supply vendors. There's a participant guide, and there's the leader guide or the host for those that are helping to serve with the team. Promote your alpha. That can just be done organically, or you could do that through the church. And then finally to train your team. And training those that you ask to be a part of this, or even for you, rather than just grabbing the book and the videos and saying, let's go, I would highly encourage you to lean into the philosophical context for how you curate and navigate the conversations of these groups. So here's what I want to share with you is this is just one piece that we snipped out from a longer small group training video that will give you some key insights and some things that I think are important. 3 keys to an alpha small group that can help set that up where it's different than a Bible study. It's different from you being the teacher recruiting somebody that's going to teach, answer all the questions. The videos will do an exceptional job with that. Having people, especially in this postmodern context, learn how to lead relationally and facilitate the discussion of those groups is incredibly important.
There are 3 keys to hosting a great alpha small group. The first is love. I think it's all about love and friendship and having fun. It's just people, and however you deal with people. And you want to get people to feel that they can trust you, that you like them, and I think that's the most important thing, that you actually want to make friends with these people, you want to get to know them and love them.
Yeah, I think that the key thing for the hosts, the helpers, is that they like people, they love people, and that they're genuinely interested in them, and genuinely interested in what they have to say. Because in the end, it's all about respect. If you respect them, even if you disagree with them, somebody comes as an atheist, but you respect their right to hold their views, and you're interested in what they have to say, that then they'll talk, and the more they talk, and the more people listen with respect, you get a whole atmosphere in the small group is marked by respect.
Alpha is 15 sessions, plus an introductory session to the Alpha weekend, and it's typically run over 10 weeks. It's staggering how much can happen in a group in just 10 weeks. A group of people who had nothing in common on week 1, by week 10 can become incredibly good friends. And I've just finished Alpha, and our small group didn't want to stop moving. They kept saying, why isn't Alpha longer? We want to carry on.
So that's why we'd always recommend people to go for as long as you can. Sometimes if you've got a university term, a semester, you might have to squash it a bit, but I would always try to push it for as long as possible. So it gives time for those relationships, those friendships to form.
So the first key to a great Alpha small group is love. And the second is listen. This is a bit counterintuitive, I think. When you're hosting or helping in a group on Alpha, you quite often think, well, people are coming with their questions, and as the leader, my role is to give people the answers.
Well, this might be the case in Bible studies or in other groups that you might have in your church, but it's not the case in Alpha.
On Alpha, the talk is where we say what we believe, but the small group is where the guests say what they believe. So hosting is about facilitating a discussion between the guests and listening to their point of view. Imagine for a moment that this ball represents the conversation in the small group, and John is the small group host. This is a discussion between John and Dan, which is fascinating for them, but it's boring for everyone else in the small group. Because they're just watching, they're not participating. That is not the way the Alpha small group works.
Here's another way you could do it. John to Dan and back, and then John to Julia and back. Now this is better, but it still all revolves around John. That is not the way the Alpha small group works either.
Instead, the conversation should look like this. John kicks off the discussion with a question, and then the guests discuss it between themselves. Occasionally, John might need to step in and help keep the conversation going, but ideally, he listens, encourages, and says very little, ensuring everyone is involved.
The small group can be ruined by two things. One is the host or helper speaking too much instead of encouraging the guests to speak. The second is allowing one guest to dominate the discussion. If this happens in the first session, talk to them after the discussion, thank them for the contribution, but then ask them if maybe next time they could help you host the group by encouraging others to contribute.
It's the opposite of sort of preaching to them. That's what ruins an Alpha small group, when someone starts preaching or trying to push from their point of view. Then it really doesn't work. Love them, be interested in them, be respectful towards them, and then they'll come back. The more they come back, the more they'll hear, they'll begin to relax, and then they begin to open up, and their lives get changed.
Of course, you'll never get it right. You'll never get it totally right. We make mistakes all the time. You don't want to put anybody ever on the spot, but you also want to draw out somebody who would love to speak but hasn't quite had the courage. Yeah, it's getting those things right, just watching people, seeing what they're trying to do.
I still make mistakes. I said to people last night when we were training people before the small group, don't try and win the argument. We want to win the person, not the argument. And if you win the person, if they come back, that's good, they need like Jesus. And if they come back the following week, they need like Jesus again. But if you get involved in an argument with them, even if you win the argument, you may never see them again. And they're not going to hear the gospel. So don't try and win the argument, but try and win the person.
It's fascinating to be able to watch. I think occasionally you'll get somebody that's a little bit more antagonistic in a group. Not too often, but sometimes you'll get a friend or somebody that comes that just likes messing with people. And they say something intentionally provocative just to kind of see if they can get a rise out of their group leader. And it's so disarming when you say, well, that's a fascinating perspective. What does somebody else think? Right? Because in that moment, the goal is not to win the argument. It is to genuinely respect them enough to be able to say, okay, I'm going to listen to what you have to say. I want you to be a part of this. And you're not expecting everybody on the front end to be Christians. But why do we do that so often? You're trying to create a space where people can actually ask questions, do this. And Alpha, as I walked through this for a number of different courses and with a number of different groups and people here now, it hit me how strategically and how masterfully, from an apologetics perspective, it both speaks to the head and it speaks to the heart. So for people who have rational objections to the faith, it helps answer those questions. People that wrestle with, God let me down, or I don't see how this can be true, or I don't, it really does connect across the board in some effective ways. So they talked a little bit about those first two there. Keys to hosting, facilitating that there. How you love, respect the people in your group, to listen to them, and then laugh. As they say, intensity is not a fruit of the Holy Spirit. But I think sometimes we just get so focused, right? It's important work, but have some fun. Build relationships. Genuinely, people, we do see that over time, really do learn to love each other and support each other along the way. For us at Summit, we started it in a home. We started it there before We built a church campus. We had been a portable church. We built the church campus, moved in the start of 2020. Started this in about 2018 to 2019 to develop some leaders on the front end because I knew I wanted to launch this to scale when we moved into the new campus. And so I'd like to take it beyond where it is here right now, but we'll have like this last session, this last fall, I think we had 9 different tables kind of meetings. So we meet large group, small group. We break down chairs and stuff and rearrange our auditorium there. So we have smaller conversations with hosts around multiple tables and groups. So you can do this with one group of people, with 10 people in a home, in a coffee shop, in a place, or you can do it in a place where you have a larger gathering, and then break that down into smaller, where you watch video and do that video time together, but your meal and the discussion is with the same people each week, so they're building relationships in that context. There also is a retreat component with Alpha along the way, so we'll often go up to Prescott, to a camp up there. And generally speaking, the rule of thumb over time was about half of the people that are a part of the course, like whatever your attendance is, if you have 100 people that come, you'd probably have about 50 that'll go on a retreat. If you have 18 people that are coming to your group, you'll probably have 9. And we've just seen that from homes to church tend to scale that way, although COVID nudged it down a little bit more in terms of people's willingness to be offsite and away and in close proximity. But that's getting better. What mistakes did we make early on? I would say hosting in a home too long. So I knew the first time we did that, the strategy was I wanted to invite a cultivated group of people that I invited from the church that I thought would be good with this ministry, invited them to be a part of Alpha, and it was all church people and leaders and friends that I wanted to be a part of helping to launch it. Started with that, and then flipped it over with the idea then that hey, let's reach out to some people we know. Let's promote this. Let's invite some others from our community. I found while we were doing it at home, and especially trying to drive it larger to scale with the church, I found that we stayed in the home too long. Now, we didn't have a building yet, but I really wish we would have at that time said, let's go rent a space in the community. Let's go find a facility over at the clubhouse of an HOA or something. Let's take it to more neutral ground, because it's easier for someone who's never gone to church before. They are not a committed Christian. If they'll walk into your home if they know you, but to walk into somebody's home they don't know, at that time was a step too far. Utilizing the church campus, at least it's a public venue, right? And they know, all right, it's a church, and this is the stuff we're talking about, the Christian faith, and but that was one mistake we made there early on. Tried to get friends and people to come, but had a really hard time in that environment. Skipped the retreat. The first time I did this, actually years earlier, I just kind of jumped over the retreat portion as a part of this. I'm just going to do it as a Bible study in group. And I was not very impressed with Alpha the first time I did that, using the curriculum that way. When we came back to that, dug in, and they actually updated some of the materials and some of the stuff, which was helpful. We tried to do the retreat locally, and you can do it like as a one day. We did it a Friday night and a Saturday at somebody's house, go there. But we had so much disruption. If you were right nearby, something's going on with the kid, and all of a sudden somebody who was there on Friday night thinks, I've just got to go take care of this, or I can't be there. We didn't have the consistency of doing it locally. So we still do it in about a 24-hour format where we go just from Friday at 4 or 5, head up, a couple hours away, overnight, some sessions, up in the mountains, change of pace, come back by 5 o'clock on Saturday. Some churches can do it as a 2-day format, but I would encourage you, if you're thinking about this, figure out, if you're doing it as a small group, maybe just change the venue. Don't do it where your group is normally. Find some place where maybe you do it outside in a park, or you hang out, or you find a fun venue, or somebody's got a different house or a cabin or a place. And then one of our other mistakes there early on is that as you have some people come through, some people from our church signed up, were interested, wanted to be a part of it. I said yes to a couple of people that were a little too churchy, that I would say saw themselves as the Bible answer man. Oh, this is I'm really going to be helpful. They're going to have questions, and I'm going to know how to tell them what they need to think. And that was a train wreck pretty fast. And wonderful people that have a great place in the kingdom. This just wasn't the right lane to serve in. Make sense?
Nate,
Yeah.
What do you do after the 10 weeks?
After the 10 weeks, we try and move them into some of our other groups and community at the church. And some groups will even kind of continue on, or that leader might like start another group and they'll go along with. And what we also do then is after the 10 weeks, we will then invite some people back to serve. And they might, some of them might be a helper in a group, especially if they're brand new to faith. You might have some people there that they were interested, loved it, very interested in coming back. They actually haven't become a Christian yet. But you'll have people that'll even serve and like, I could help with the food team, or I could help to greet and welcome people. Like, that's awesome. Come and be a part of it again. And so I've seen some people that have gotten baptized or have come to a different place faith-wise. The truth of who Jesus is has taken root in their life after going through Alpha a second time or third time. Yeah. Some of the things we did right that we have learned that really worked. Again, developing leaders and building the team out the gate. For us, I had some very specific strategy and ideas in mind in terms of launching the new church campus and what we wanted to do in that space. But being able to multiply enough leaders and enough volunteers early on so that if it takes root and you've got the ability, that you can say, hey, we thought we might just need 1 or 2 groups, but we actually need 3 or 4. Try and get the runway of some volunteers so that if people come and people invite friends and it grows, be ready and prepared with some volunteers to be able to scale it up. Encouraging previous attenders and volunteers to bring friends. We will get some people, we do ask, we promote at Summit and we say, hey, if you're new to church, you don't really know much about the Bible, this whole thing's new. If you've never done a small group before, this is a great place to start. Because it gets a lot of people there with a lot of questions and some people that are on the edge of faith. But over time, it was a couple of sessions ago where finally for the first time, more than half of the people that came to Alpha were there because of invitation, not because of registration at the church. And trying to, and it takes some time, but constantly casting vision with people that have gone through this. Who do you know that you could invite? Who are your friends at work? Who are some of the guys that you hang out with? What sports teams are you a part of to help do that? Yeah?
Just a quick riff on that. Do you usually, when you're inviting a friend, encourage the person doing the invitation to go through? I know a buddy at work.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I encourage, I say you can invite people to come, but I say you're more likely to get your friend that doesn't go to church if you're willing to come with them. Okay. And here's what I will do. Number 4 there, we have found this in the last couple of years, so powerful to be able to say, invite your friends, and just invite them like a coworker to say, hey, just come and give it a try for one night. For a while, I don't know, it was just dumb. I hadn't even thought it through. We kept trying to get our friends that were invited to register for this. Like, that's dumb. Why would you ask somebody who doesn't go to church to go register, log into a church website, sign up for, and it's not complicated, but to be able to say, and they look at it, it's like, oh, it's a 10-week course, and it's much, much easier if you say, so what I love is, if we can have a good base of people that are there, but the first night we are ready for, say, bring friends, do this, you don't need to register, just come, bring somebody with you. If we can take this many people, and on the first night we can take this many more, and then the dust settles right here, then it is much more effective that way. And sometimes I even tell people to say, just get them there for the few weeks, see how they go. They may connect and engage so well that they're off to the races, or they come for the first night. Oftentimes, yes, the friend will come and go through the journey with them. But from that faith perspective to say, man, if God's put this person in your life, it's 10 weeks. Take the journey, see what happens.
We also don't tell them about